Olumide Ijose will lead us with the segment on the economics of social democracy. Asiwaju Bashorun will be here to talk about social democracy in Nigeria, how it's been practiced in time past, and give us focusing on the Lagos experience. And then this will be, all these threads will be tied up neatly by a moderator-led 40-minute panel discussion with none other than the esteemed Odia Ofemum. So at this point in time, I'd like to introduce our moderator first before I introduce the first speaker of the event. Our moderator is Odia Ofemum. Odia Ofemum is a renowned Nigerian poet and polemist. He's the author of many volumes of poetry, books, and political essays, and on cultural politics. He's also the editor of two significant anthologies of Nigerian poetry. His work has been widely anthologized and translated, and he has read and performed his poetry internationally. Without, let me not say more and spike his guns. Without much ado, I'd like to introduce and at least make welcome our moderator for this occasion, Odia Ofemum. Now that I've introduced him, I'd like to yield the floor to him while he introduces the first speaker at the event in the person of Professor Nina Low, to take us on what social democracy is. Odia, sir, are you there, sir? Mr. Odia. Hello, sir. Hello, sir. Okay, Odia is spotlit, but he's not at his mic now. Hello, sir. Can you hear us?
Hello. Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Nina Lou is here.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. Please, sir, before I welcome you to the podium, to quickly take us with your session of the event, it would be very remiss of me not to at least put a brief citation of you out there so that all the esteemed guests can see the caliber and the stature of the powerful mind that is presenting to us. Professor Adebayo Ninalowo, PhD, New York, Canada, Pro-Chancellor and Chairman, Governing Council of the Lagos State University in Nigeria. Before joining the University of Lagos in 1985, where he is Professor of Sociology today, Professor Ninalowo taught briefly at York and McMaster Universities in Canada. His long-term research and teaching interest had consistently been in the areas of social democratic governance and problems of underdevelopment and legitimation crisis. This research interest had been global in orientation with particular reference to the African continent. There was recently an empirical study on marginalization of the middle class in East, West, and Southern Africa, sponsored by the Ford Foundation through the auspices of Cotsera. Professor Ninalowo was co-director for the segment of the study in West Africa. He was a visiting senior research scholar on democratic governance and regional integration in Africa at Development Policy Management Forum, DPMF, in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. He was also a visiting senior research scholar on development across the African continent and in global context at the African Center for Economic Growth, Nairobi, Kenya. Aside from having his ideas on social democratic governance and problems of underdevelopment published in edited and authored books, he is also widely published in international journals and monographs, including Foreign Affairs Reports, African Development, Scandinavian Journal of Development Alternatives, Canadian Journal of Education, inter alia. He is also founding editor-in-chief and editor of two major journals in Nigeria, namely Unilag Sociological Review and Journal of Society, Development and Public Health, respectively. He is former subdean of postgraduate studies and former head of Department of Sociology, University of Lagos. He had also been an external examiner assessor to a number of universities, including the prestigious OAU, University of Benin, Bayero University in Kano, University of Ibadan, and Covenant University. He was also a member of Planning and Implementation Committee of Fountain University, Osogbo, Osun State, to the point of granting of operating license by the NUC. His membership of professional bodies include those of Canadian Sociological Association, Nigerian Political Science Association, American Sociological Association, Nigerian Industrial Relations Association, Nigerian Anthropological and Sociological Association, and International Sociological Association. In 2009, Professor Nina Lowo was honored with the chieftaincy title of Bekoni of Ikorodu, i.e. the glorifying enhancer of knowledge, by His Royal Majesty Alayeluwa Oba Dr. S.A.A. Oyefusi Oguntade, C.O.N., the Ayambure of Ikorodu of blessed memory. His scholarly engagements had recently taken him across the world, including across locations in Cambridge, UK, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Canada, United States, and across Africa and Japan. Welcome. Please help me make welcome Professor Nina Lowe as he steps to the podium to take us on his own segment of the lecture. I also like to retroactively welcome and make welcome Odia Omeifu. Welcome, sir, as we all see you and recognize your presence in the house. So, Prof, please step to the podium and enlighten us. Thank you, sir. Prof? Prof. Nina Lowe? Prof, are you there? Can you hear us? Prof, are you there? Prof?
Hello?
Hello, Prof.
Line ne anan.
Oh,
Shi baya nan.
to duk da haka tunda ba wai sunan yana rubuce kai ba. Shi prof din wata kila ba ya samu network problem haka. Maybe the prof is facing a
Hello, everyone. We're trying to get the prof on. He's here now. He's been spotlit, but I think his mic will be unmuted shortly, and he'll be able to speak with us. Thank you very much. While we engage the good prof to rouse him to start speaking. Okay, I've just heard on good authority that Professor Ninalowo is having technical challenges with his muting and unmuting button. We're going to try and resolve that shortly. Please give us a few seconds while we sort that out. Hello, everyone. By virtue of the fact that technology can fail us at any point in time, we're going to work around rather than allow technology to delay and throw us off course with our presentation. I would stand on all protocols before me and call on our venerable Professor Olumide Ijoshe to come to the podium to take us on the economics of social democracy. I know this time around we're flipping the arrangement. It would have been nicer to have Professor Ninalowo start with what social democracy was before having Professor Ijoshe to come up with the economics of social democracy, such that one professor doesn't spike the guns of the other professor. But since we're still trying to resolve this technical issue, please, Professor Ijoshe, sir, could you do us the honor? Please, let me also invite everyone to help us make welcome Professor Ijoshe to step up to the podium and talk to us about the economics of social democracy, sir. Please, sir, does that make sense? Can we work? Can we use that as a workaround? Hello, Professor Ijoshe?
Yes, you can. Thank you. Thankfully, yes, you can. I'm ready to go.
You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, sir. So please, everyone, help me make welcome Professor Ijoshe as he steps up to the podium to talk to us about economics.
Welcome, Prof. Looking forward to it.
Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon, Professor.
Afternoon, sir.
I'm talking to you from Chicagoland. And for me, it's 5:33 a.m. in the morning. I had to get up at 3 o'clock just to make sure that I don't have any issues this morning. So I'm pleased to be part of this webinar. I'm a member of FSD. I need to make that disclosure up front. And I'm actually the coordinator for FSD in North America, or the interim coordinator in North America. I'm a professor of international business and strategy at Governor State University, which is a public university owned by the state of Illinois and located in Chicagoland. And just a little bit of background on myself. And my doctorate in 1989 from Ohio State University, Columbus, Ohio. My areas of specialization, I'm a labor guy, labor relations, labor economics, and manpower planning. That's my academic, degree area. I worked in Nigeria for Accenture when it was Anderson Consulting, and I worked with Shell. I worked with Africa Alliance, the private equity group. I worked with Lagos Business School, and I did some consulting. That's a little bit of background on me. My research area is basically in knowledge transfer, as well. I just transfer knowledge from advanced economies to developing economies like Nigeria, and also economic growth, with emphasis on Africa and in general, and Nigeria in particular. So I'm going to share my screen, and we'll go from there. Because I have a presentation that I would like to make. I hope everyone can see my screen. Could you please confirm that you can see my screen?
Yes, sir, we can all see your screen. I can see your screen. That's even much of what we're saying now.
Okay.
Data sets, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, and UK. Yes, sir.
So social democracy, it's the political system, right, with economic consequences, economic outputs. The essence of social democracy is a belief that the private sector of an economy, right, should produce goods and services consumed by that economy, and should produce goods and services exported by that economy to other parts of the world. Social democracy is not an economic system where the government, right, is at the center of production. Rather, it's an economic system where private enterprise and entrepreneurs produce goods and services that is consumed, right, by individuals, businesses, government, and is exported. It's very, very, important to understand that social democracy, totally support and is built on private enterprise. Where social democracy differs is a philosophy that believes that certain public goods are best provided by the government. A public good is a good that is consumed by all citizens of a country. In social democracy, there's the belief and the intent that public goods relating to public education should be provided by the government. Public goods, pertaining to infrastructure, roads, bridges, waterworks, those are just examples, should be provided by the government. In social democracy, healthcare is either provided by the government directly, as you have in the UK, or is supported by the government, as you have in the United States of America, which to a large extent is still, a social democracy, but on the margin. So that's been eroded, but it's still, but some of the vestiges of social democracy are in existence in America. Social democracy believes in income support. Income support meaning that if a worker is unemployed, right, social democracy believes that the government should provide unemployment insurance and income support for that individual, such that the demand economy does not fall catastrophically when especially when unemployment is very high. So by providing income support, workers are still able to pay the rent, put it on the table, and still spend, right, and the economy stay afloat, sort of falling when unemployment is very, very high. Democracy, believes in income support for the retired. So if you're retired, social democracy believes that you should get a pension that is tantamount to a living wage, so that the person can continue, right, to maintain the lifestyle that they used to as best as possible. Not 100%, but as best as possible. Social democracy also believes in social support for the weak, right, the impaired, the infirm, right, people who cannot walk, right, due to no fault of their own. For those people, social democracy believes in providing, access to housing, access to food, access to medical care. So those public goods, right, social democracy believes that the government has a role to play in putting them in place for the benefit of individuals and the economy as a whole. But it's important, right, to emphasize again that social democracy is not a proponent of government control of the economy. It's a proponent of government provision of public goods, while the private sector and entrepreneurs produce goods and services that is consumed and is exported by an economy. So the question now becomes, how is this paid for? How exactly does democracy pay for the public goods, right, that accrue to its citizens? You can just imagine the cost of providing education, infrastructure, income support, housing, social support, and healthcare. It's tremendous. So democracy pays for this by taxes, right? By imposing taxes on individuals and corporations. What you see in the slide is the total effective corporate tax rate of the key Scandinavian countries, right? The United States of America and the UK. The good thing about democracy is that there's an experiment, right? Putting it in place so we can see what the economic impact has been of the policy, of the fiscal policy of taxing and spending to provide public goods. Like I said earlier on, the USA used to be a prime social democratic country. It became a social democratic country after the Great Depression of the 20s, right? Because that was when it was understood that what you get the government, the country out of that depression was to spend on public goods. So that's when the security came into place in America. That's when housing, employment, insurance, a lot of the things that are still in place today, right, were put in place back in the 20s, right? Similar with the UK, right? It used to be a shared democracy until Margaret Thatcher began to erode the tax base that supports shared democracy. But the Scandinavian countries, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Iceland, and Norway, right, have been consistent democratic countries, including Germany to a large extent. But China itself, has an element of social democracy. The difference in China is that you don't have political democracy, but the Communist Party in charge. But the economy, right, is a combination of state-owned enterprises and private enterprises, and the government provides public goods. But we're going to leave China out of the equation because it is not a political democracy. So here you have data from 1972 to 2020, showing what the tax rate is. I'm not sure how well you can see, the numbers, but the next slide is, it's more instructive because here you can see, right, well, the highest value, corporate tax rate for those 5 countries or 6 countries, the mean and the median tax rate. And you can see that, this is effective tax rate, right? Not the nominal tax rate. It's effective tax rate once you've controlled for deductions. Because in America, for example, businesses can deduct for research and development, they can deduct for depreciation, they have all ways of deducting, right? So in America, the highest value right now, right, it's 12.9%, right? And that's because of Trump's tax cuts. In Sweden, it's 30%, Denmark 36%, Finland 24%, Iceland 37%, UK 26%. So you can see that the USA has the lowest corporate, effective corporate tax rate among all those countries. And the Scandinavian countries have the highest, 30, 36, 37%. So the idea is for taxes, corporate taxes, right, to be used by the government, right, as a tool to provide public goods. I'm going to show you slides on what public goods have been provided and the value that the economy generates by the government doing this. This slide here talks about the top effective marginal tax rate at the personal level. The first slide looks at tax rate at the corporate level. This is at the personal level. Because at the highest tax rate, right, for Americans, is 37%. And you have to earn almost $150,000 and up, right, to pay such high taxes. In Sweden, 52, Denmark 55. So you can see, what those high effective marginal tax rates are, right, in those economies, right? Again, right, if a government has to pay for the public goods, right, it has to be able to fund it. And the funding comes from taxes. So the question is, what exactly is being funded and what benefits accrue to the economy, right, from being a social democracy. Here, this slide shows you what the top effective marginal tax rate is for those 6 countries when you consider all sources. And all sources mean corporate tax, individual personal tax, social security tax, and sales tax. So you add all those 4, major sources of tax income, right? You'll see that in Sweden, the effective tax rate all in, right? Corporate, personal, sales, social security is 76%. For every naira that is spent, 70% of it goes as taxes, right, in different forms. In the USA, it's 47%, in Finland, 71%, UK, 59%. Okay. So the question is, what exactly, right, is this useful? Okay. So the slide shows the average years of schooling. Schooling is very important in an economy because schooling is where the skills and knowledge, values, the behaviors, attitudes is inculcated in citizens, right? So you'll notice that across the 6 countries, there's not much difference, right? In the USA, right, 13 years is the average number. In Sweden, it's 12 years. In Denmark, it's 12. In all those advanced economies, schooling is taken as very important, and this is compulsory, right? For years of compulsory schooling. So that means 6 years in the USA, 6 years in elementary school, right? 6 years in secondary school, which we call high school, and at least 1 year, right, in a community college or an apprenticeship program, right? And so that, and then you'll see the ranking, right? Of the average years of schooling, and those rankings are across the entire globe. So Finland has the highest average of schooling, right, in the world. The US is number 5, UK is number 14, right? Okay. But again, this is mandatory, right? And what's important here is that this is public schools, right? And those are funded out of those tax revenues that is collected, right, by the government. All right. The next slide shows the ranking in mathematics and science, right? In the global economy of today, right, a country cannot compete. You cannot innovate. You cannot compete if you're not strong in mathematics and science. Technology, right, is the ground floor, is the foundation, right, of a lot of goods and products that we consume. And without math and science, you cannot do that. So why this is important is this. It's one thing for a government to tax and spend on public schools. It's something else, right, for those public schools to have a high quality level, such that students are graduating, enough students are graduating, with high knowledge of math and science, so they can go, become engineers, right, who go ahead and design, build, and maintain infrastructure, right, because it's a country that cannot design, that cannot build, and cannot maintain infrastructure, right, is imperiled from the sense of cost and national security, right? So if your country is dependent on other countries, come and build the roads, come and build the bridges, come and build the airports, come and build the seaports, come and build the infrastructure, that is a weak country. That's a country that needs to invest in science and technology, because that is the basis for that independence that an economy needs to be competitive. So you see the rankings, the US is 45, right? So Finland is 3, so you can see that the Scandinavian countries, right, where social democracy is a political philosophy, do a much better job, right, in graduating students, right, who, right, have a good in science and technology. While the USA that has back on the democracy, and it's not spending as much on public education, right, has regressed. The US used to be, if this data goes all the way back to the early 1900s, the USA was number one for until it moved away from state democracy. Now, does that mean that the USA is not the world leader in innovation? It doesn't mean so. What it means is that, at the base, right, at the base level, right, those other countries do a lot better, right, in mathematics and science, and as innovative as the US on a wide basis, okay, as opposed to a narrow basis, because US innovation is more like in Silicon Valley, but in other countries, right, there's innovation in a lot of other areas of human endeavor, right, as not much technology alone. Okay. So this slide shows the average cost of university education in those countries, right? So it's like what you're looking at when you say $20,000 to $46,000. $20,000 refers to going to a public university, the average cost of a state government-owned university. In the United States of America, the federal government does not own universities. Public universities are owned by the states. The $46,000 is the average cost of going to a private university. In Sweden, public universities are free. In Denmark, they're free. In Finland, they're free. In Iceland, they're free. So in those countries, you want to go to a public university, they're free. You don't pay tuition. But if you want to go to a private university in Sweden, average cost is $21,000. Denmark, $12,000. Finland, $16,000. Iceland, $7,000. Right? So you can see, how democracy in operation in this slide, because it enables the government, right, to invest, right, in free higher education. In the Scandinavian countries, education is free, right from elementary school to university level, right, for the citizens, and paid for, right, by tax revenue that is accrued to the government. So now, what are the outcomes of all of this, of all this, of the democracy and all the spending on education and healthcare and infrastructure and all of that, right? So this shows the ranking of infrastructure quality across those countries, right? From 2007 to 2020.
The video is stopped. Your microphone is
could somebody mute themselves, please? Thank you. Right. So you can see that Scandinavian countries are doing very, very well when it comes to the quality of the infrastructure. The USA it's not doing badly, and the UK is not doing badly, right? But the Scandinavian countries are consistently good. You said infrastructure quality in the USA has deteriorated, right? But in Scandinavian countries, it has remained consistent. So the question is, how do these countries finance their infrastructure? Now, this is the way it works. If any one of these countries wants to build a road, right, they will ask themselves, what is the cost of building that road? Obviously, no country has enough money, it can raise enough revenues, right, to pay, to build all this infrastructure. So countries will have to issue bonds and treasury bills. Now, if you go to a bank and say, I need ₦1 million, right, to build a road, but I can guarantee you that I have revenues of 100,000 naira consistently, and I can use that tax revenues to back up the bond that I want you to raise. The bank is more likely to give you a 10-year bond, right, ₦1 million, knowing that that tax revenue of $100,000 or 1,000 naira will be used to pay off that bond over the 10 years. That's how this works. It don't work based on infrastructure bonds, right? Now, the cost of infrastructure itself is a function of the ability of the country to design, build, and maintain that infrastructure. So the country, right, wants to build a road and has a domestic capacity to design, build, and maintain the road because it has invested in education, invested in mathematics, invested in science, invested them in public schools and in universities and create engineers and technicians actually build the road, it will be cheaper for that country. Another one who has to bring in the Chinese, Americans, or somebody else come and actually build the road for them. Because it's another country, right? They can, put up, a markup, right? Just for showing up, come and build out your infrastructure for, right? So your tax base goes a lot farther in supporting the infrastructure built out if you have, the human capital, right? The domestic human capital, actually do the design, the construction, and the maintenance. And putting that domestic human capital in place, requires funding. Into democracy, that funding comes from that tax base, right? And once a road, no country can develop fast without good quality infrastructure. And not just infrastructure in a small area, but widespread. Good roads all over the country, right? Good seaport, that provides access to the ocean, right? Good bridges, good, broadband, access, right? Good, telephone, capacity, good electricity, all across the country, right? You can, unless you have that in place, the country is going to struggle. But those things cost a lot of money. So again, shared democracy provides the tax revenues that government authorities can use as the basis, right, for issuing bonds. Right. One of the reasons why Nigerian bond pricing is very, very high is because the tax rate is low, because the skills and capabilities to build infrastructure has to be imported. So it's a lot more expensive, and it's also because, right, the tax revenues that's actually available to build that infrastructure is very small. After the government has paid for the government salaries and and the fixed costs that they have to pay for, right? That takes up almost by some estimate that I've seen 90 kobo of every dollar of taxes. So you have really, really small amounts that can be used as leverage to issue bonds, and that will be comfortable like an institution to support. Here is a ranking report of healthcare, right? So there's not much difference here when it comes to healthcare quality, amongst all the 6 countries, right? Even though the funding is different, but the outcome as of the ranking is it's similar, because these are advanced economies that prioritize the healthcare of the citizens. However, even though the ranking and quality is basically similar, right? In social democracy, the budget impact of funding healthcare is a lot lower than the budget impact of funding healthcare in a country that is not shared democracy like the USA. In America, the government has to borrow a lot of money, right, to support its healthcare, programs. In Sweden, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, and Norway, government borrows less, right, to support healthcare. And in the UK, government borrows a lot too, right, to support healthcare, because the tax revenues are not there, right? But again, the outcomes, the rankings of the outcomes are pretty similar. That brings us to the budget deficit, because if you want to provide these public goods, right, it's either you can pay for it, or you're going to borrow money to pay for it. So you can see that in 2020, right? The budget deficit of the United States as a percentage of its GDP is very high. It's 14%. In Denmark, it's 0.6%. What that means that the US government is borrowing a lot more money, right, to support the provision of public goods, roads, bridges, healthcare, like broadband, those kind of good.
Professor, sorry to interject, sir. You have less than 2 minutes actually to go. Please, sir.
All right. So we can see, what that is. Okay. Now this is about innovation, right? Innovation ranking. You can see that it's pretty similar. The US is still a lot more. It's still as innovative as most of them, right? Some because of a higher stock of engineers and technicians, the science and tech that I spoke about earlier. The GDP per capita for all these countries, is pretty much the same in terms of, the flows and the flows of GDP per capita, right? Whether you do it on a nominal basis or on a purchasing power parity basis, we looked at the actual value of your currency as opposed to the nominal value of your currency in comparison to GDP per capita. And the growth rate is pretty much even across all these countries, right? Life expectancy, right, at birth, right, which is a function of healthcare, right, which is, democracy is funded by the government more than in non-democracies. It's pretty consistent across all of that, all those countries. The inequality is much higher in America than, in Scandinavian countries and even the UK, because the tax system, right, starts to redistribute, income, right? Now inequality is low. Inequality simply means the gap between richest and the poorest, and that's important because the higher the inequality is, right, the higher the crime rate is. So the crime rate in America is much higher than in Sweden or Denmark or Finland or Iceland. Because inequality is a lot higher, people are poor, and poor people, right, are more likely to, go into do crime and become terrorists and all kind of things. So poverty is a big driver of those dysfunctional behavior. So just to round it up, a democracy is a system that believes that the private sector, right, should produce goods and services, but government should create institutions, right, that collect tax revenues and use those revenues to fund the provision of public goods, which now accrue back to the private sector. Because the private sector now has good roads to transport the goods and services, good seaports, right, to bring in goods and to export, good airports, right, good electricity, like, so those public goods end up supporting, private enterprise. I'll let me stop here and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, Prof, for enlightening us on the economics of social democracy. Thank you very much, sir. We'll swivel back to you when it's time for the talk show proper. At this point in time, I'd like to recognize the presence of Professor Nina Lower, who come to take the screen, take the podium, and tell us about social democracy. Prof, please, you have the floor now. Welcome, sir, and talk to us, sir.
Well, can I proceed now?
We can barely hear you, sir.
Yes, I'm speaking now. Well, a most convenient way for me to proceed with this discourse is to refer to my acceptance letter to the Federal Social Democrats on whose mandate I stand. Of immediate relevance in the letter is as follows. And I quote myself, I said, frankly, on account of our common values and interests, I already feel privileged as I accept the invitation with utmost dignified humility and a sense of obligatory responsibility. The tone of excitement in that self-quotation had undoubtedly been stimulated by a number of complementary factors. Firstly, the robust telephone conversations initially brokered by Professor Demola Mojola, Engineer Olusegun Mabobuje, Professor Olumide Ijose, and my humble self evidently invoked mutual respect. Secondly, a proper understanding of
Hello, sir. Please, your visual has hung. We're aware of the fact that Prof has very horrible network challenges. I'm sure he'll resolve this and join us shortly. Prof, are you there? Hello, Prof. Yes. Prof. Ninalo, please, if you can hear us, kindly turn off your video. That way your audio can flow without the drag, please.
I don't think it's there anymore.
Okay, so. Okay, seeing the fact that Prof's network has really dragged and caused a lot of issues. Okay, he's coming back in. I recognize the distinct presence of Odia Feimo, who's our moderator for this event, would also take us through a panel discussion session on social democracy, merit, and its application to the Nigerian situation. I don't know about the Prof now. Since the Prof is not in, at this point in time, I'd like to yield the floor and recognize Odia Ofeimo, sir. Please, sir, welcome, sir. And everyone help me make welcome, please.
Well, I thought I was supposed to intervene after all three had spoken so that the discussions can be full-fledged and rounded. Because of technical hitches, I could not follow the last presentation properly. But I thought after this presentation and the one that will follow it, I hope there's a third one, then we would have a full-fledged discussion. As things stand, what I am required to do to anticipate the speaker who is supposed to be on at the moment. And anticipating him.
I think he's back.
Okay.
If we can unmute.
Okay.
Professor Nino, please unmute.
Hello.
Okay. Yeah. I think if you switch off your video, your voice may be more stable. Yes. We can hear you.
Hello.
Prof, we can hear you.
We can hear you. Hello.
We can hear you. Can you switch off your video? Then your audio may be better.
And so, yes, the button is not.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, Professor, you can go on. We can hear you.
Well,
I think he's gone.
It seems, Professor. Yes, it seems Professor's video has totally dropped off totally, and Alhaji Bashorun is unfortunately unavoidably absent. But so that we do not delay with we do not give us more delays with the hitches with presentation, can we move to the part B of the presentation proper, which is introducing the essay competition? Because after what we did first before today was to engage our youth, the leaders of tomorrow, the people who should be in governance tomorrow, to tell us about social democracy from the lens of the Nigerian youth today. We had reached out to a lot of the educational institutions, tertiary institutions to present. Prof, are you back?
Yeah,
okay. If Prof is back on,
if you switch off your video, it'll be easier for us to hear you. Prof, if you go off video, you will consume less bandwidth.
Prof, can I hear you now?
Are you, is that for Professor Nalu?
Yes, please.
Hello?
Yeah. Professor, we can hear you.
I think, you know, let me just make it convenient and go to the diagram straight.
Okay.
There is a diagram that more or less summarizes my thoughts on certain democracy. And I want to engage with that diagram. Can you see the diagram, please?
No.
Hello?
No.
Hello? Am I being heard now?
We can hear you, but we can't see any diagram.
Hello?
I think we'll take the liberty of checking through his report and then screen sharing on his behalf.
Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. I mean, please, the diagram on page 18 is the crucial diagram, please.
Okay,
so
we'll
screen. On page 18. The diagram is on now. And, in A, you know, cell A, are we together?
Yes.
You have what we call democratic legitimation processes. That is that political authority needs to be perceived as legitimate by the citizenry. Constitutionally, as well as socially. And then in B, we have what we call modes of popular empowerment. One is socioeconomic, where we talk about as part of the responsibility of the political state, the citizenry must be guaranteed some basic requirements of living, as in housing, transportation facilities, feeding facilities, you know, and number two, as a mode of popular empowerment, is what we call socio-political empowerment. And aside from universal suffrage, as in voting rights, people should be able to exercise freedom of association, freedom of thought, freedom of espousal of
Oh.
It seems we have lost the prof again. In furtherance of this event, do we proceed to the segment B of the event right away? Sorry, Mr. Odiasa, your mic is muted.
If going there will not prevent us from coming back where we are at the moment, I think we might as well go to the other place before returning.
Thank you very much, sir. I agree with you totally. And David, please, could you stop mute screen sharing? So at this point in time, I'd like to call on David Ogoshola to take the podium and address us, because the part B of today's event is introducing the essay competition. And after he introduces the essay competition, we'll call on the chief examiner for his remark, Professor Aloysius Okolie. So David, please come up to the podium to talk to us about the essay competition. I hinted at that we had done, getting the youths to talk to us about social democracy, to get essays to come in, to see social democracy through the lens of the Nigerian youth. David, please, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Cheng. Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you for staying with us. Apologies for the little technical issues we're having. Yes, just in 1 or 2 minutes, sometime last year, the Federal Social Democrats movement sponsored an essay competition where we wanted to get our young people, our students, who, of course, the people to whom Nigeria actually belongs and for whom we're doing all that we're doing, to get involved in thinking and discussing solutions and ways forward for Nigeria. And just to trigger that conversation, our topic for the essay was social democracy and its potential to deliver sustainable and inclusive national development in Nigeria. And we put it out, it was open to undergraduates of Nigerian higher institutions, anybody who is in any higher institution anywhere in Nigeria who is within the first degree or equivalent of their studies. And it was open for a few months, and we had a lot of students who indicated interest. I think over 600 students signed up to participate in the essay competition, and many of them sent in essays. After the closure of the deadline, we did the first review and sent out a few, sent out the essays for review. And thankfully, we had the partnership of the Nigerian Political Science Association, whose current chairperson is thankfully the chairman of this event, Professor Hassan Saliu. They've been very, very helpful throughout the process. They nominated a couple of professors who helped us with the assessment. And we had the chief examiner who presided over the assessment and the assessing and selecting of winners, Professor Aloysius Michael Okolie, who is also here this afternoon. And so at this moment, I think we're just going to yield the floor to the chief examiner to give us a brief remark on how the assessment went, their overview of what our young people are saying. Is there, what are his remarks, how were the winners selected, and just to give us an overview of the process before we go ahead to announce those who emerged as winners in the competition and make announcements of the winners. So Professor Aloysius Michaels, we're going to yield the floor over to you to go ahead, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, David. I thank the organizers. I thank my association, Nigerian Political Science Association, particularly my able president, Professor Hassan Saliu, for giving me the opportunity to coordinate the essay competition. I really want to state clearly that it was not an easy task, but it was a very, very interesting assignment. Interesting in the sense that most of our youths are losing values about the fundamentals of democracy and what it stands for, and the processes through which we can ignite and activate the values and the norms associated with productive engagement with one another. So we received a total of 87 essays from people, from students from across Nigerian universities. And it was such a very exciting reading, and they focus on social democracy and its potential to deliver sustainable and inclusive national development. So we expected them to address issues that relate with social democracy, moving from a broad spectrum of democracy to reducible elements on social democracy and relating it to how it will lead to sustainable development. So our major concern was national development that is sustainable under collective engagements, which we can reduce or conduce under social democracy. So we now step down the evaluation, chose again 3 eminent professors, Professor Nnabugu, Bierenu Nnabugu, who happens to be the vice president of our great association. Then we equally selected George Geni, a highly accomplished professor in our discipline, and Professor Lawan. So these 3 were the principal reviewers. So we now assigned 29 essays to each of these professors. And the module was that when they look at, we now give a template, we produce a template that tried to interrogate issues of structure of presentation, levels of analysis, or the logic of analysis, the language, the accuracy of points, the empirical strengths, creativity, and originality. So putting together, we assign scores to each of these categories. And we now agreed in the templates that after the assessment, you produce your score, and each of the assessors or reviewers will now come up with 3 of the highest scorers from the category. So they were categories A, B, and C. So by the time we harvested the 3 submissions from these resource persons, we had 9 persons that scored highest from each of the categories. We now related the 3, reviewed the 9 together, and we now agreed and came up with 3 best by scores. And the 3 of the candidates by the scores were now presented to the organizers for further administrative action. We equally went further for people that came 4th, 2 of them, and the 5th, 2 persons again that scored. The people that came 4th, 66 and 60 score, and the person that came 5th that scored 63, 2 persons again. We'll just send all of them to the organizers for further administrative action. But the highest score, actually, I'm not mentioning, is left for the organizers to now announce and present, scored 72%, very encouraging. And the second person following scored 70, and the third one 67 by that category. But we made a number of observations because we were able to find out fundamentally that most of the essays, the content lacked some depth in appreciation of what is really social democracy, the very reducible variables for the social democracy, and the aspect on the praxis as it relates to the application to issues bordering on national security. We are very hazy in most of the essays. And we equally thought it was good to mention that in some of these essays, because probably they just saw essay as writing anything, some of them didn't even have any systematic way of presenting their thought processes. And the more than 60% were littered with avoidable grammatical, typographical infelicities. And we pointed them out and we made our recommendations on how we can improve subsequent presentations. Finally, I believe that we recommended a 2-step process of, first of all, cleaning up those ones who have 2 levels of evaluation, cleaning up most of those ones, coming up with those ones that are too competitive, so that 1, it will reduce the burden. 2, we sieve out from the onset those ones that are not particularly too encouraging to move into the second stage of assessment. Despite all this, we were so impressed that at least we are now trying to extend and broaden the scope of studies and understanding of social democracy and what it stands at the nooks and crannies. That's where it should start, so that it will start from bottom-top approach, so that you inculcate it as part of the civic education in our educational climb. And if it is possible, we can take it a step. Our association is equally making a recommendation or bringing out some recommendation on how we can help, in coming for intermittent workshops across zones. By the time the FSD finds the proper funding, we can collaborate with them, go into zonal grassroots orientation and mobilization as it concerns deepening the values of democracy, social democracy, and what it entails to talk about national development and sustainable development. So I thank you so much for this opportunity. On behalf of my president, we appreciate FSD. We are prepared to continue to collaborate in not only discourse, but in trying to serve as reviewers and other related issues that will help to promote democracy in Nigeria and to institutionalize decent practice in our political process. So we thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much, sir, and for coming to give this review and for the much work you did with your team. Thank you so much. The FSD is deeply grateful and appreciates all your hard work and your commitment and sacrifices. Well, at this point, I would want to call out the names of those who emerged as the top 3 winners in the essay competition and the 4 others whom the reviewers recommended for recognition also. Altogether, we are going to be awarding 7 people. The first prize is going to receive an award of 100,000 naira. The second prize, 75,000 naira. The third prize, 50,000 naira. And the 4 others who did outstandingly well, each of them will receive a consolation cash prize of 20,000 naira each. And further to this, the FSD is going to be launching a leadership academy for young people shortly. And we're going to, not just the 7, but a few others who outstandingly did well in the essay will be awarded scholarships into that academy, where we begin to develop young people who have not just the character to lead, not just the competence to lead, but the values that drive good leadership. We don't know where people are going to turn out to lead. Not the people who make influential decisions in the country, and not just those who hold political offices, not just the presidents and governors, but the heads of associations, heads of unions, heads of civil society. And so we want people to get to those positions equipped to lead effectively, to hold leaders accountable, and to bring the kind of leadership that Nigeria deserves into every level of leadership in the country. At this point, I want to call on the pro-tem chairman of the FSD, Mr. Olutola Mopoluri, to take on this part from here and call out the winners of the essay competition. Over to you, sir, my chairman. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Let me start by reiterating why we went for this essay competition. It is important for us that we involve the younger segment of the population, the youth, as they are called, because to them belongs the future. And we felt that it was important to bring them into serious discourse about governance, right from the university level, so that when they come out into the real world, they will know the choices that are available to the country. They are the leaders of tomorrow, and therefore they should be socialized in ways in which they can take leadership position. The second part of it is we're hoping that some of them, through this essay competition, will be provoked to look at the problems of Nigeria and to think about the solutions to the problems of Nigeria, right from their university days. I remember that in the 60s, university students were as much a part of the political agitation, even before then, for independence and also for good governance. And we believe that that tradition needs to be reignited. Our campuses should be alive with political discourse and tutelage in what politics really entails and its benefit for the society. And therefore, we are really gratified by the interest that was ignited by this essay competition. We believe that it'll grow, and we hope it'll grow, because we will sustain it. We are determined to sustain it because we believe that the future truly belongs to the youth, and they must be brought into the mainstream of political discourse in Nigeria. Without much ado, the third position goes to Francis Aodongu Wayo. He's a 300 level law student of Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife. Could you please help me spotlight him? Is he in the audience? You can spotlight his check anyway.
Please turn on your video, Mr. Wayo, so we can spotlight you. He's in the audience.
He's in the audience.
Yeah. If you turn on your video, we can spotlight you actually.
Let's see his face. He has a prize of 50,000 naira.
Okay, yeah, that's him over there.
Okay, Mr. Wayo, congratulations.
Sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, you will soon receive an alert.
All right.
Okay. The second prize goes to Amuche Pauline Anekwe, 400 level English and Literary Studies student of University of Abuja. Will you kindly please spotlight her?
Amuche, can we have your video on for a second? Can all the awardees just turn on their videos before we call your name so that it's easier to just spotlight you? We can't add, okay, good, yeah.
Okay, congratulations. Well, well, congratulations. It's
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you have been very, very competitive, and you have a prize of 75,000 naira. You will get an alert soon to recognize that. I'm glad, we are particularly glad because you are a lady, and nobody can say that
Thank you. I'm grateful.
Ladies don't come last. I mean, we know that they're as competitive as the men, if not even more competitive these days. So it's we are delighted that you came second. It will show all the first prize goes to a 400 level law student of University of Benin, Joseph Owejide Matawa. He goes home with a prize of 100,000 naira. Congratulations, Joseph. You will soon get an alert to that effect in your account. I understand you've also applied your account details.
I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Ogunshola, what is next?
Sir.
You want me to also say the consolation prize?
Yes, I think so, sir.
Okay. We have as consolation prizes Ekpa Blessing Ojoma, 100 level economics student of Federal University, Lafayette. Udochukwu Peter Paul, Mweke. Ekpa Blessing Ojoma is a female. Udochukwu Peter Paul Mweke, of course, is male.
If your video is there, we can spotlight you as your name is being called.
Next is Ethelbert Kelechi Nwokocha, male, 400 level mechanical engineering, Federal University of Technology, Minna. And last but not the least, Ifunaya Ngozi Chinedu Eze, female, 100 level Pharmacy, University of Nigeria, Nsukka. I'm wondering why we don't have anybody studying political science or philosophy in any of these prizes. Well, congratulations to all of you. You will all get a prize of 20,000 naira each. Spread the word in your universities and to your friends. There will be another essay this year. They should get ready. But more importantly, you should take interest in the politics of Nigeria. And for those of you who believe in social democracy, form small associations of some social democrats in your university and try and spread the gospel. If you truly believe that it's a path to greatness for Nigeria, then you should get active. We're not going to change the country by just sitting and complaining. We have to get up and do something. And doing something means also winning more people who are committed, to dealing with the problems of Nigeria in a rational manner. Thank you very much. I congratulate all of you and thank you for participating. And we will be engaging you for the future. I'm sure the Secretariat will contact you, and I'll also be in touch with you to see how we can jointly together spread the gospel of social democracy. Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Ogunshola.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, sir. And I think that actually wraps up the part B of this event. So I'm going to hand over to Cheng to take us back to where we were. I think Professor Ninolo is back now, and I believe more stable. So Cheng, over to you and to our discourse.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, David. Welcome back, Professor Ninolo. We have finished with the part B of the event, which we've dispensed with quickly, and we want to round up with part A of the event. The kids have told us what their thoughts on social democracy were. Please, sir, we need you now to educate us on social democracy before we go into the talk show proper.
Thank you very much. Let me just go through as briefly as possible through a diagram of which you may want to kindly assist me in sharing. It's on page 18 of the manuscript. We talk about components of democracy. Democracy is supposed to be a driving tool towards the amelioration of the human condition, as it were. So when we talk about components, in the cell in that diagram, you have A, as in there must be loyalty to political authority based on fulfillment of social contract between political authority and the citizenry. That loyalty is depicted as democratic processes of legitimation, and it could be constitutionally determined as by virtue of the constitution of a particular socio-political system. And two, it could be by popular perceptions of legitimacy of political authority. Then segment B, as is being depicted in the diagram that is now being shown on the screen, is most of popular empowerment as key components of a process of democracy. The one is socio-economic empowerment, as in catering for the basic needs of the citizenry, basic needs such as housing, transportation, and health facilities. And number two is socio-political empowerment. Aside from universal voting rights, we have freedom of expression, freedom of association, as guaranteed by the tenets of democracy or particular constitution. Then legal rational empowerment, that is also guaranteed by the given constitution of a social system, as in basic rights of the citizenry. And we have number four, sociocultural empowerment, that is freedom of thoughts, freedom of espousing a given religion or lifestyle, as the case may be. Then we have what we call gender empowerment. Equitable rights across gender lines, both female and male. They should be able to pursue their ambitions without any hindrance whatsoever. Then in segment C, as being depicted in the diagram, you have separation of powers as between the executive, the legislative authority, and the judicial authority. These different organs of the political state, they're supposed to perform their functions in favor of improving the conditions of life of the citizenry. Then we go to D. We have cohesive security apparatus as being key components of the democratic process. You have one, the armed forces, and the armed forces being responsible for protecting the territorial integrity of a particular given social formation or society, and to ward off possibility or potential for external aggression. That's pertaining to the armed forces. The police,
Hello, Prof. You there? Prof, sir.
He's here. I think he's just.
He's there, but I think
he's still
just frozen. I think he should. I think he might have gone, might have dropped out.
Yeah, he has now.
Maybe he needs to close his video. He needs to close his video.
Okay, having seen that we're having issues with his presentation, if we have further challenges, we'll just share the presentation, PDF version of the presentation he is making, with everyone here present who has registered to attend with their email. I think that's what we may have to do. But the next question on our minds is, can the event chairman, the chairman of this event, in the person of Professor Hassan Saliu, can he speak to social democracy as a topic, sir?
Or may I suggest that we just take about a few people to talk about social democracy, those who are interested, and then maybe for about 10, 15 minutes, and then we can take on other people. So if there are people who believe they are vast in the subject, we welcome you to please raise your hand.
Okay, at this point in time, we have 2 hands raised. We have Femi Olufumi.
Okay. He's a professor, so I think I will concede that he should be called.
Yes, sir. So Professor Femi Olufumi, please, can you take the podium, sir? Talk to us.
Professor Olufumi, you have to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
We can, sir.
Can you see my video?
We can see you.
I just have to put on a shirt because
okay.
I realize I just have to talk now. Well, I want to say a bit I can about social democracy by first doing a contrast. And that is political democracy. Political democracy, I will simply define as that popular definition of democracy, government of the people, for the people, and by the people, marked by the right to vote and be voted for. But that doesn't confer on you other dividends of democracy. And that leads us to social democracy. That is democracy that is not just limited to
Professor
Olufumi,
I think if you go off your video, maybe you will have more stability.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
You can hear.
Yeah, so did you hear me up to my definition of political democracy?
Yes.
Now, social democracy takes off where political democracy ends. And that is talking about the dividends of that so-called democracy. Social entails health, education, having a living wage, etc. That is democracy that entails an irreducible minimum of qualitative social conditions for the mass of citizens who enjoys that right to vote and be voted for. And that is what is lacking in Nigeria, which makes those people who constitutionally enjoy the right of political democracy to be vulnerable to the political buccaneers. They know that these people are impoverished. They are hungry. They don't have money to afford quality health care. They can hardly pay the school fees of their children without going to one political godfather in the neighborhood or the other for help. Even when their wives are put in to bed in the hospital, they need some token money. They will have to call one honorable or the other. That is what the political buccaneers capitalize on. And that is what social democracy seeks to address by ensuring that you have a minimum irreducible welfare provisions that covers healthcare. When you are sick, it's not a question of whether you have money to pay for it or not. It's a minimum guaranteed by law that you should be taken care of at that point when you cannot take care of yourself. Education shouldn't be about whether you have parents there to pay for your schooling. In as much as you are born into that society, you are innocent. You didn't choose to be in that society by yourself. The government of that society owes you that basic obligation of ensuring that you are educated to the highest level possible, as far as your faculties can take you. So that is and then it also guarantees you a decent living in the sense that it either affords you a job and a living wage to boot, or if after trying your best you cannot get a job, it affords you some social welfare package. That is, you are entitled to some stipend. You are entitled to an accommodation, what maybe they call council flat in the UK. And then so that you will not be at that nadir of society where you will be forced to go and beg on the street, or you take to prostitution if you're a lady, or you take to armed robbery or cultism or whatever to survive. Because existential human needs are not needs that one can say, I will do without them. And if you don't have them, our capacity to hold on to our decency differs. Somebody will say, I would rather die than prostitute. Somebody will be there and say, with my kids crying, I would rather go and prostitute than see my kids suffer. So social democracy is an essential ingredient of democracy in its holistic definition. I rest here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, welcome back, Prof. Please, sir, thank you very much for coming back to join us. The thing is that your network is well served by your video coming on. So I would suggest that you just run up your presentation in the next 5 minutes and then just turn off your video so we hear your audio, and we'll just project your presentation, and then we'll share it with everybody here present.
Well, I was getting at the notion of social democracy being embracing of empowerment and having a particular dividends that you cater for essential needs of the people, such as education, transportation, housing, protection of fundamental human rights, as in freedom of association, freedom of thought, freedom of espousal of choosing religion. And when you get to the larger political situation, there must be transparency, and the bit about, for example, not even knowing what political office holders are enjoying by way of legitimate remuneration package is not in tune with what we call social democracy. There must be accountability also on the part of politicians and operators of the different bureaucracies of government to the citizenry. There must be accountability. And the fourth estate of the realm, as in electronic and print media must be permitted, must be encouraged to perform their historical mandate of overall oversight functions for probity and accountability on the part of what is going on in the larger political setup. All this would enhance the conception of social democracy strictly for the amelioration of the human condition. And if we, like, we've already articulated in the main frame of the manuscript for this presentation, if you do a cross-cultural translational comparison as to what different countries will be enjoying, their citizens will be enjoying along the line of their conditions of living, we notice that the same set of people that have well-defined social democracy in terms of meeting up with the existential conditions of people are the same set of people that do very well in terms of conditions of living of their people. So, what we are getting at, when we talk about democracy, social democracy in particular, is supposed to be a tool in enhancing conditions of life of people, barring which what we should be talking about should be, not democracy, but offers of democracy, as in a sham of a democracy, which you could characterize as shamocracy, as it were, So that's the long and short of what we have in mind by way of talking about a typology of social democracy. When we say a particular political state is being responsible or not being responsible, failing or being successful, we have parameters of ascertaining whether or not a given political state or political structure or government, as the case may be, is fulfilling its mandate along the line of social contract between that political authority and the citizenry. The extent to which the particular state or political state is succeeding is a function by which the welfare measures of the citizenry are taken care of. So it's to that extent we can say we have in place social democracy or deficit of social democracy. I think I want to pause for now. I thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you, Prof, for your very, very stellar presentation, even though network really interjected, but thank you very much all the same, sir. At this point in time, I'd like to call to the podium esteemed guests, Odia Ofemo, who will now facilitate a roundtable discussion between just the two presenters that are here present. Otumba Bashoru is unavoidably absent, and he won't be here to present today. So we're just going to the talk show and round up from there. Thank you very much, sir. Please kindly unmute. Mr. Ofemo, kindly unmute. Thank you, sir.
I missed the first presentation, and I had thought that it would be made up for by the third presentation, which unfortunately is not available at all. But I should thank Professor Ninolo for the effort he made. But I think Femi did a very good job of anticipating him. And I think what we therefore have is a fairly pro-political presentation, so that although the students of political science, you can say that the contributions that have emphasized the political aspects of social democracy have been very properly presented to us. In general, until the political and social dimensions of social democracy, you are hardly in a position to have a rounded view of what it is all about. Social democracy usually is referred to as a mere distinction between it and a preceding and supposedly more thoroughly ideological positioning by Marxist socialists. Social democracy distinguishes itself by not being Marxist. But the economic underpinnings are not necessarily too different. You hear of the average Marxist socialist distinguishing between a world in which society will be completely classless. And you then, of course, hear the more capitalist-oriented interventions in social democracy, implying that while you may not necessarily have a classless society, the very fact that you are removing the economic subordinacy of the capitalists within the system is itself a movement towards some kind of amelioration that brings us closer and closer to social democracy, which is why very many capitalist systems are marked by this tussle between socialists who may claim to be Marxists and socialists who do not claim to be Marxists, and capitalists who move towards liberal democracy by emphasizing the fact that you could have a society that is pro-masses, pro the lower classes, without being, shall we say, truly capitalist. Properly speaking, most societies in the world today have been compromised by a movement towards socialism that none can escape. The fact that we cannot escape it means that we are actually within social democracy between different ways of not being capitalist. Center struggle that by very many Democrats by refusing to over-ideologize. Over-ideologizing is what it becomes when, for instance, you argue over the concepts rather than deal with the actual practice of the form. For instance, in the Nigerian political system, the closest to a truly social democratic position that we have had in Nigeria is the position of Obafemi Awolowo. Rather than allow arguments over what is ideologically correct or not correct, he reduced all the struggles of his political party to a matter of programs. Every citizen has a right to education, a right to health, a right to employment, and the sustenance of social and economic development moves around questions that contribute to how these goals are achieved for individuals and for groups. I suppose the reason we are still discussing social democracy and are not just restricting ourselves to those structured positions by Awolowo's political party is that we are refusing to construct what it means to actualize the social democratic principles. The Nigerian Constitution, for instance, is divided between the basic talks about the structure of the political system, whereas when you get to the directive principles of state policies, you are actually dealing with almost all the social democratic principles that Nigerians do not talk about in everyday life. In order not to support properly social democratic positions, many Nigerians simply do not talk about it. We do not talk, for instance, properly about how every Nigerian child should have education. We have a constitution that says unless you are educated up to a certain level, you cannot vote. I mean, you can vote, but you cannot be voted for. To a certain extent, our constitution does say in that sense that those who have not had education are not citizens. A proper social democratic struggle, therefore, is to make sure that every Nigerian is a citizen. And one of the ways in which you can prove that you are a true citizen in a country like Nigeria with such a constitution is to ensure that what the constitution says is abided by in every material sense. How do you properly become a citizen if the constitution says you can vote, but you cannot be voted for? And if you apply that principle, most Nigerians who are today enjoying a sense of being free, a sense of being citizens, will be denied their right to citizenship. I don't want to overplay it, but I think that one of the beauties of discussing social democracy is that in a country like Nigeria, what is being demanded of us is a return to proper constitutional principles which allow us not only to have education, but to have it as a matter of right. Because to deny anybody the right to education up to the level that allows for voting and being voted for is actually to deny citizenship to some and grant it to others. I hope that in the discussions, we will need to focus attention on how those who have been denied citizenship by the Constitution of Nigeria can be given proper citizenship. I hope I have not overstretched it, because what I'm supposed to do as a moderator is to simply link one speaker to the other. And what I have done is probably not the right way to do it, because I did not listen properly to the contribution I really needed to listen to on the economics of social democracy. But I believe that all of us, many of us had what was said and will be able to respond to what has been said. Now, I don't know what I am supposed to do since I cannot immediately see those who are before me. So it will be a matter of who wishes to intervene. And at this moment, I think Mubaruri is, and Wabwezi are in front of me, and I should hope that if they wish, they could take on from there.
Okay. Thank you very much, Odia. I think that you've contextualized the issues really back to the political history of Nigeria. But let me just make some quick points. And this will go back to what I think part of what Professor Ninon Lowo said. The whole world is converging in the middle, in the sense that even the Marxists, the democratic socialists, who were actually Marxists, have found out that they cannot drive their economy based only on collectivization of production.
Yeah.
And therefore, they have all had to liberalize in one way or the other, at least in their economic system, to ensure that the private sector takes a larger and much more larger role than they had hitherto anticipated or their ideology will allow them to admit. So China, for instance, the growth of China's economy is driven by large corporations, some of them public, but a lot of them increasingly private. So you can see a convergence happening, and there is no pure capitalist country today. I think, as somebody has observed, every capitalist country is trying to provide social safety nets because there is no way that they're going to have peace. And I think, just like I think it was Awolowo that said that, if you are rich and you live amongst a large number of poor people, you will not be able to sleep at night because you will remain awake fearing that the poor are going to overrun you. So every society is converging in the middle. But to ensure that there is clarity as to what any group is offering the society, it is important to define what you are. And social democracy is today clearly defined. It believes in liberal democracy, which means that you have multi-party system. It believes that the private sector will drive the economy. It also believes that every citizen, as Odia has said, has access to education, which means every citizen will be empowered to contribute its best to the society. Because if you don't train your citizens, there is no way you're going to have a productive economy. And if you have a large number of poor people who, because they haven't been trained to produce, you're going to have a very weak economy. So it is in the interest of the prosperity of the society for every citizen to be empowered to be productive agents in the society. Not only must they be productive agents, the distribution of income must be such that the people at the lower end of the income spectrum, and as Professor Ejoshe pointed out, if your Gini index is such that the poor, the difference in income between the poor and the rich is so large that the poor cannot participate in the economy of the country, your economy is going to be small. So it is important that people are empowered, people have decent jobs. And I think for FSD, one other thing that we are committed to is to ensure that there is full employment. And it is so easy to do in a country like Nigeria where we produce nothing right now. There is so much work to do, yet we have such a large number of unemployed people. And if you have a large number of unemployed people, you cannot but get insecurity, because somehow, some way, the people who have been marginalized and neglected in the society will try and get their own back on the society. I think, let me stop there so that I don't dominate the discussions. But I do hope that I've made some things clear.
Let me jump in here. And I just want to differentiate between social democracy and democratic socialism as political ideology, right? A social democrat is a capitalist. A social democrat is not a Marxist. A social democrat is not a socialist. A social democrat is a capitalist who believes that unfettered capitalism is dangerous to a country, that unfettered capitalism leads to poor outcomes for workers, poor outcomes for the environment, poor outcomes eventually for the economy itself. That is a social democrat. A democratic socialist is a communist, is a Marxist, believes that the way to impose Marxist rule is through democracy. Elected as a government, to be given that mandate, to impose Marxism on the country. So let's be very, very clear. A social democrat is a capitalist who believes in the private sector, who believes in capitalism, but also believes that capitalism has to be regulated for the greater good. So let's think that social democracy is equivalent to Marxism. It is not.
Thank you for that clarity, sir.
I'm excited by the distinction you have just made. It is just that the Chinese have changed the picture. They've changed the picture because just as you may wish to, from the old Marxist line, accuse them of moving towards capitalism, you find amongst them a movement that is decidedly collectivist in outlook. So that even the capitalists who have grown up from city to city develop within their cities a collectivist outlook that allows for private control of corporations in a way that the average capitalist would understand. What is exciting about social democracy that struggles against democratics who are actually performing in the marketplace in a way that most capitalists do. They make no distinctions. And the creativity demanded of the average citizen is a creativity that takes from both sides of the platform, so that in the end, any hard and fast rule which attempts to draw a line between the social democrats and the democratic socialists may simply not follow the same rule. In the United States of America today, the kind of demands that some Democrats are making on the Democratic Party is almost collectivist in outlook, in the sense that it gives to the American state powers that in the past most people would not allow the state to have. When you think of it fundamentally, if you have a capitalist system which operates on the principle that education, health, employment should have a preponderance of state intervention in the way that many people are demanding even of the American society. You know that the bridging that has taken place at the center does not allow for such a hard and fast rule. The Western Europeans have managed to create a society that is capitalist, but is also in that sense fairly collectivist. The reason I actually made a distinction between Awolow's position and that of the others was that the Awolow principle allows for the freedom of the individual. The state is not the be-all and end-all of all social forms of organization. The fact that it allows for individuals to participate at all levels is something that corrects many of the. As for making social democracy a completely capitalist phenomenon, it is important to say that it does not really become capitalist when you take over all the socialist notions that allow you to put all children born by a Nigerian man or woman at school, irrespective of the status and the economic standing of their families. Every child is supposed to be there. That is not a capitalist notion. It is something that came in after. And therefore, both systems, frankly, are being corrected from the edges. And that is what is exciting about many social democratic positions.
Let me jump in here and just
please, for the sake of your time, I need to point out at this point that we are 6 minutes from the planned end of this event. So we'll take just 3 more comments at this point in time so that we can proceed accordingly. Well, continue, Prof.
Yeah, but Chancellor, let me jump in and just respond to the last comment. Collectivism, right, which is the bedrock of communism, means that the state controls the means of production. And the state also does the production. In America, there's no collectivism in America. The state does not control the means of production. In America, a private person controls the oil wells, controls the coal mine, controls everything, right? It goes to individuals and private people. The state does not produce anything, right? So it's a misnomer to characterize Democrats, right? In trying to become a social welfare as being collectivist. because they're not advocating for the state to control the means of production. The fight in America is between the capitalists, right, who believe that education, Republican, education should be a private good, and the government should not have any role in education. Who believe that government should not regulate businesses, right? Who wants to go back to the American of before the Great Depression? Let's be very, very clear about it, right? A social democrat is a capitalist. Social democrat does not advocate for control of the means of production. And as for China, right, social democracy or democratic socialism doesn't apply to China because there are no elections in China, right? If your political system doesn't have elections, neither ideology applies to either country. China, in his wisdom, when Deng took over, after Mao taking over and killed everybody and done the Cultural Revolution and everything, when Deng now came to the 70s, Deng now said, you know what? I look at Russia, I look at Soviet Union, they're not doing well. Let's privatize the economy. We're going to keep political control. As we're talking today, China is cracking down on capitalists, right? I'm sure we know about what's happened to the founder of Alibaba, right? Because they're getting too much economic power, and it's threatening their political power. So let's just be very, very clear about these issues and not label what's happening in America as collectivism, or not try to label a serious Democrat as a Marxist. I just yield to the questions from the audience.
Thank you very much, sir. Basically, if I can just make a comment, I think what you've just said now, Prof, underscores the need for clarity in ideology. Because I think China is still committed to its collectivist origin, even though it clearly sees the economic advantage of capitalism. And that is why they will crack down on an Alibaba, the founder of Alibaba, because they believe that he's getting out of his breeches. The other thing that I would like to underscore, of course, which I agree with you also, that America has no collectivist sympathies. I think what America is going through is pressure from the left wing of the society, the liberals, to ensure that the social safety net is widened to prevent, a larger differential in incomes and distribution of the wealth in the society. I think at the end of the day, what I would like to see is to, first of all, agree on the fact that there is liberal democracy, which allows for multi-party elections. That is a distinction between a socialist state and a social democratic state. China does not allow multi-party democracy. Russia, because of its recent history, has a pretense towards multi-party system, but as you can see, they muzzle the opposition. They really don't want the opposition to be able to take anything. So they are still, Putin currently, as far as I know, is wedded to the past, to its communist past. And therefore, he does not want to allow space. For us, in a society like this, social democracy must mean freedom, total freedom of political association, and we must be able to contest multi-party elections so that nobody can then say they are dictating, that there is a democracy of dictatorship of the proletariat. No, there is no dictatorship that is compatible with democracy. If there is any dictatorship at all, then that is not democracy. I think that's all I would like to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairman, sir. So I'm calling on Yemi Johnson.
I should thank you for making. Audience. Who's almost done? Give the audience a chance to ask questions, please.
So at this point in time, I take Yemi Johnson, whose hand has been up, please.
I should thank you for making that
Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and thank you, Professor Joseph, for your presentation on the economics, and Mr. Odia. It's a pleasure to see you, sir. Your name is one that I grew up with when I was in Nigeria. My questions, I've got two main questions. Looking at the economic side of social democracy, as Professor Joseph sort of set out in his slides, you can see that in the purely social democrat states like Finland, Sweden, the rate of taxation is quite high. Of course, that's balanced with the fact that there's a lot of social services, education is free. But at what stage does it almost become like a wealth distribution mechanism, which of course raises a red flag to those in the capitalist camp and can almost be used as a counterpoint to social democracy, that it's some form of transfer of wealth from those who have it to those who don't, and thereby acting as a disincentive for people to work hard and all that. Because then the second point is, if you look at that, for social democracy or the principles, particularly the economic principles, almost favors a large state, whereby the state plays a greater role in economic affairs, albeit in the form of regulation. And that's been one of the issues in America, where even though, as you said, the American state doesn't control economic production, but in a roundabout kind of way, through the regulatory system, it does control. And my concern or my question is, how do you draw the balance between, okay, the good of social democracy, but balancing against that, the fact that the state doesn't become so big that it almost becomes some form of communism, in quotes, in very large quotes, to be precise. And of course, it then is not seen as a form of wealth redistribution, because those are my concerns. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir. So let me respond to you. Let me respond to your concerns, Yemi. The first one, well, let me start with the second one. You know, that regulation can lead to state control, right, of the economy. So you got to ask yourself, what exactly is being regulated, right, in a shared democracy? In America, what is being regulated? Pollution, right? No democratic government regulates the amount of what you produce. Nobody's going to say, I only want to produce 10 cartons of milk. I want to produce 10 cars. Nobody's regulating the pricing. This is the price that you have to sell to your consumers. That's all left to the company. What is being regulated essentially is pollution, right? Because we don't want you to just spew and stuff into the air and mess up everything for everybody. That is the primary, point. When Donald Trump came in, right, he said that he was going to put regulations because the cost, right, of not polluting is very high. It adds to the cost of production. And if the final cost of if the unit price of your final product is raised by X%, they're trying to mitigate pollution and regulate that, and you're competing with China, doesn't do that. China is a part of the WTO. You cannot close your borders. So in the marketplace, the goods are competing with goods from China. You have a disadvantage. So what capitalists are saying is that until there's a level playing field, right, in regulations and the cost that adds to production, we should not regulate at all, right? So regulation doesn't control what you produce, how you produce, what pricing. Here in costs, those costs are meant to safeguard everybody else. Number two, when it comes to redistribution, right, of wealth from the rich to the poor, the end point is the outcome. What is the outcome of that redistribution, right? If the outcome is to create better education for everybody. So I remember when President Clinton came to Nigeria in the 90s and they saw a beggar on the street. It's like, this beggar on the street, right? How do you know that if you educated that beggar, you'll not be the next Albert Einstein? Terrorist, right? How do you know that if you educated that terrorist, you'll not be the person going to create the next best thing ever? You do not know, right? So capitalism by itself, if it's the survival of the fittest, right, it creates a condition where there's segregation and there's lack of opportunity across the board. By providing education for everybody, you give everybody a chance to use their talent as appropriate and to rise to the top and help the general society. The whole rat race of the capitalists, right, don't like that. Because
thank you very much, Prof.
Assets and their wealth, right, exclusive to themselves, not to help other people. These are just the philosophical facts behind your question.
Thank you very much, Prof. As I speak, we are 6 minutes over overstretched our time, so we'll take only 2 more comments before we move to the next item on the agenda, with due respect to all the distinguished speakers. Okay, no more comments.
Mine is not a comment. Mine is simply to say that, well, this is not a moderator's tone. It is simply to say that when a capitalist society has a pluralist middle, in which case people are free to choose the political vehicle through which they come to power and determine decision-making for a society. You already have moved away from the collectivist past and from the collectivist implications of either democratic socialism or communism. Because you are free to choose politically. But that is not to say that the moment you have a plural society politically, you cannot have collectivity. No. The truth is that there is a center of appropriation from which distribution to various sectors of the society can take place. All societies, therefore, have a tendency towards collectivism. To deny it for America or for any other society is a way of whitewashing what is so brazen. Many of the Western European societies have reached the point, actually the purpose is that China actually seeks to, we die a natural death, as they get richer and are able to distribute, because you need, in fact, to remember that although China and India are heavily populated societies, it takes a little collectivism in China to make distribution grow faster for the average individual than it does in India. What some achieve through collectivization, others achieve through what you may call overtaxation. There is a sense in which all systems operate virtually on that wavelength.
I guess the debate will continue.
I would say that when America becomes a collectivist society, the day when the state owns all the means of production, when the state owns all the oil wells and the gas wells and the
No.
They don't have to own, but they tax.
No, Professor Joshe, I think you ignore the basic premise of Odia's use of the word collectivism. I get the sense that Odia's use of collectivism means public ownership and distribution of certain powers and goods, in the society. And I think we cannot, if we take that context, we cannot ignore the fact that, even Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare are forms of, collectivization of the medical services. Because if you left to the capitalists, everybody will go and pay for his own medical care. There will be no state intervention, and anybody who is going to get any help at all is going to get it through charity.
You know what? Because of time, right? We don't call that collectivism. We call that welfareism. When you say when you use the word collectivism, you mean it means of production. When you use the word welfareism, and what you just described, so we should use the correct terms.
Yes,
I think the correct terms. That will less confusion.
We are moving to the center from both extremes.
Yeah, I think Odia, you just made the right point. Everybody is moving to the center from both extremes, and that is correct. Nobody can deny that. But what I think we must all recognize, or what I think that I understand by all these also, is the fact that multi-party democracy is critical to social democracy. Social democracy does not deny choice in terms of political rights to the citizens. Democratic socialism, which is Marxism and communism, denies the choice to the ordinary citizen. It is essentially dictatorship of those who are in the Communist Party. And I think if we understand it that way, I think we can live it that way.
The only place in the world where it almost worked in a different way was Chile, but they smashed Chile with a military coup. So we cannot tell whether it could have been different.
Well, okay.
America and his cousins in Western Europe, the biggest fear in this world is communism. Have a passion against communism, which is the reason why they were willing to shed blood and treasure, right, to confront communism in Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia. This is why they're against Russia today. They see Putin as instinctively wanting to go back towards communism. This is why they barely tolerate China. They believe that, Marxism, communism is antithetical to their own way of life. That's why they smash Chile.
Okay.
I
guess we have two people on the platform. One is pro-America, one is pro. Yes, Professor Nino.
Exactly. I'm sure you don't know how to characterize. You don't know how to characterize my position, because frankly, I began by saying Awolowo did not want this splitting of hairs over ideological issues. So he reduced them to basic projects and programs that you can relate to. And I still think that if Nigeria must move, we need to start by identifying those projects and programs which we must undertake within a democratic order, that is a pluralist democratic order.
Okay, so we're together.
Once that is in, once you have multiple political vehicles for arriving at your goals, you have moved away from your fuck that, because that is no longer part of the argument. Two parties are allowed within a system.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Please, Professor Ninano,
Yes, thank you very much.
I'm very clear that, you know.
I have the floor now?
Just one sentence, just one quick sentence, right? I am pro social democracy and pro Scandinavian. I'm not pro American. I'm pro the Scandinavian system.
Thank you very much, sir. Please, Professor Nina Lowo, sir, you have the floor.
Yes,
sir.
just, you know, a bit of maybe conceptual or terminological clarity. You see, I've been hearing recurring expression of communism, as if it exists. The man that talk about, you know, communism over 200 years ago, he was envisaging a classless society. Have we ever seen a classless society in existence since 200 years ago? No. You know, Marxist, you know, Karl Marx was more or less romanticizing about a classless society. But over the years, the world has never witnessed a classless society. Pretension to the contrary is in China. Yeah, it doesn't exist. No classless society exists anywhere. But what we want to embrace is a society that is oriented towards existential, you know, amelioration of humanity. You know, whether you call it, you know, socialist welfare state or simply social democracy, that's fine. But to talk about, you know, loosely about communism, we have to be careful. Even though, you know, people do refer to China as though it's a communist society. You know, there is no classless society in China.
Thank you for that clarity, sir. A private sector that takes over everything, it is also not possible.
Well, you know,
if you have a
I'm not even talking about that.
Sector that takes over everything, you can't have it. You have a different kind of classless society.
Please, sir, I'd like to fix a time limit to our deliberation on this particular roundtable discussion, because we are now at 2:47, 17 minutes past our initial time for closure of the event, and we still have other items on the agenda. So can we have the closing remarks from all polar positions with regards to social democracy? So can we have closing remarks before we move over to the event chairman's commentary? Thank you very much, sir.
From my position, it's simple. It is possible to have a society that is not Marxist or communist, and that is not also capitalist, because both systems are being revised by in the case of the so-called scientific socialists, their positions have been so revised by capitalist preference for pluralism in politics.
Thank you very much, sir.
So that you no longer quite have what began as simply communist. In the same way, compromised by the insertion for majority of the people pray for, or what was structure of the system of freedom.
Thank you very much, sir. Network is really interfering with what he's saying. If everyone can hear me, I think what our venerable distinguished speaker is saying, that we've moved into an era of bloodlines. Everybody's moving towards the center. I think that quite surmises it, sir. I think we move, please, sir, with that, is that a fair, blunt summary to allow me then move on to the next speaker's closing remark so that we can move on to other activities? Please, sir, is that fair enough? Hello. Okay, I think his network is still giving a bit of a challenge. So
can I give my closing remarks?
Yes, please. Yes, Prophet Joshua, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. So this is my conviction. That shared democracy is where Nigeria needs to go if we want to accelerate its growth. Right. You know, Ghana talks about great leaps. If you want to get to great leaps, shared democracy is the way to go. Nigeria is a country with severe infrastructure needs. Those needs are best delivered by local talent. Local talent needs investment in education. Those investments have to be paid for. That democracy is a way to centralize fiscal revenues to invest in talent. And that talent can go and build our roads and our bridges. We know how long it takes now to build a road. It takes forever to build a road. It takes forever to build a rail track, forever to build a generating plant, forever to build a refinery. Dangote is a refinery for only God knows how long. Because our experience has been under construction, reconstruction for forever. And that is because we don't have the local capacity, right, you know, to build that infrastructure. For democracy, we have to invest in education, invest in science, invest in math, invest in technology, create those capabilities, which is required to build that infrastructure much quicker, and that will, you know, hasten economic growth, right, create jobs, right, and reduce poverty, reduce tension, right, reduce terrorism, right, because unless you can change economic growth, we're not going anywhere in a hurry, right, reduce all those social tensions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. In a nutshell, like we usually say, innovate or die. I think a mandatory for Nigeria today is to embrace social democracy as the quickest way out of the rut we're stuck in today. Thank you very much, sir, for the essence of that. Is that the essence of your summary, sir?
No, yeah, it's essence because education is how you put those capabilities in place. Yes, we paid for, we're a big country, 100 million people. We need that democracy to be able to accrue the fiscal revenues and make those investments.
Thank you very much.
That was exactly what Awolowo did, right?
Yes, sir.
In education and saw the results in the Western region.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. So now in conclusion, the last closing remark, take from Professor Nina Lowo before I move on to Professor Hassan Saliu for his commentary and closing remarks for the event. Please, Prof. Nina Lowo.
Thank you very much. The essence for us, let me say, we must congratulate ourselves for being able to be part of this discourse. In that, when we talk about the polity, government, whether you call it social democracy or what have you, you know, the ultimate is for the amelioration of the human condition. If people are suffering, you know, en masse, you know, there is a deficit of formal educational opportunities, healthcare measures are not properly in place, and so on and so forth, then you cannot be talking about a responsible political state, you know. But if you are talking about putting in place measures along the line of government that would make qualitative difference in conditions of living for people, then we can say such a political system is successful. The essence for us in terms of governance or operation of the society through the instrumentality of the political state is to allow for the amelioration of the human condition, barring which we have no business in being in government. I thank you very much for your opportunity.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Very, very brilliantly put. Thank you so much, sir. At this point in time, I would like to thank all the discussants and our esteemed moderator, and even Mr. Mobolurin, the FSD chairman, and Professor Ijoshe for their very brilliant discourse on the topic. I think this topic is so rich. I think we'll have to have a session where we have an in-person working session to have this further, and then we plot a roadmap for our nation, not just to talk about it ideologically, but have architected programs to move us from where we are. to where we should be. Now, moving on to the next item on the agenda, which is the event chairman's closing remarks before we move to the vote of thanks. At this point in time, I'd like to call on Professor Hassan Saliu, who please honor us with his closing remarks, sir. I yield the podium to you, sir.
And thank you very much. I want to begin by saying that a process has started, advocacy has started, Nigerians have been treated to the other variant of democracy, which is social democracy. We recall that we embraced this Fourth Republic, or we started it off in 1999. Between that time and now, if you conduct any public poll, it's more likely that there will be many more Nigerians, there will be more Nigerians that are satisfied with the level of delivery of the current Fourth Republic. The expectations were quite high in 1999, but year in, year out, election after election, you see that the number of Nigerians who keenly follow the democratic process has been declining. The quality of services has also declined. Then the question to ask is, will it not be proper for us to try social democracy? I want to recall toward the end of last year, I was National Defense College, and I was asked to talk about popular democracy and Nigeria's search for unity and stability. And at the end of the lecture, I did make a case for social democracy. Not that it's totally perfect, not that it doesn't have its own pitfall, but when you look at what social democracy in other countries are able to deliver, to the extent that those who are number one, number two, number three, or those of them who are in the forefront in terms of democracy in the world, will appear to be countries that have embraced one form of social democracy or the other. To that extent, one may not agree with people who have argued that talking about social democracy is a lazy talk. It's not a lazy talk. It is a credible alternative to what you have. May I, at this point, recall some of the high points that have been made? One, social democracy tends to achieve a higher level of inclusiveness than what we currently express in Nigeria. We have children and women and the rest disabled that are not being carried along. And when you look at the nomination fee of political party, I think the point I'm making will be very clear. When will I be able to save 22-point-something million to go and take nomination paper out of my less than 500,000 as a professor of 20 years standing? You can see the point I'm making, that increasingly more Nigeria are being sidelined. Increasingly more Nigeria are being drawn at the bus stop in the course of the democratic process. Justice has also been mentioned. Justice in all its ramifications, because under social democracy, because of the democratization of the productive process of factors or the process leading to development, you see, and the pursuit of public good, you can see a qualitative difference between the menu we are currently being served in Nigeria and what social democracy can do for us. People have also talked about a high level of accountability, transparency, openness. Yes, in Nigeria today, even with the Freedom of Information Act or whatever, official information is still not easily available. People are spending our money without being accountable to us. The other time when Nigerians talk about why were we taking Chinese loan, a public functionary condemned our intervention and said that whether we like it or not, the loan must come. And I think they have come. in a social democracy, in a democracy that is performing well, that is functioning well, I think the public functionaries should not be tired. Will not be tired in explaining and explaining. After all, you are holding the position in trust for them. So therefore, those who have given the mandate have the right to ask you questions. But with what we are practicing now, people get easily hungry that Nigerians are asking questions. Social democracy has an attribute of opening up the economy space in a guided manner, unlike what you have, that you can do whatever you like. Public good, that's very important, makes social democracy a tempting recourse, a tempting result in Nigeria, especially as we're having challenges with our current variant of democracy. So many points have been made, so many questions have been raised, so many concerns have also been expressed. At this point, I want to thank the speakers, Professor Yose and Professor Nina Luwu. They have actually given us food for thought. They have placed certain things on the table for us to digest. I think the digestion will not end today. Certainly, it will continue for some months and years to come. At this point, I want to thank the FSD for organizing this program and for collaborating with MPSC. Professor Okoli, you have made us proud. I deliberately choose you, and I think I've not regretted choosing you as the chief examiner. Dear participants, colleagues, everybody, I think it's my pleasure to bring this session to a close. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you so much, Prof. Hassan. Such a very, very brilliant recap of activities. Thank you very much, sir. We really, really are in your depth for this. At this point in time, I'd like to call on someone to, yes, please, we feel free to drop your gratitude on the comment section to let the Prof know how thankful and grateful we are for his sermon. He has summarized everything brilliantly for us. At this point in time, I'd like to call on Mohammed Hassan Garba to help us with the vote of thanks. Then we will close immediately after that. So vote of thanks, which is the last item on the agenda, by Mohammed Hassan Garba. Please, are you in the house? Hello? Mohammed Hassan Garba? Hello? Hello? Mohammed?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Mohammed Hassan Garba, yes.
We can see you, but your audio is not too strong.
Okay, how about now? Hello?
Yes.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you. Please proceed. Sorry, you've gone lower again. Since you've already muted your video, can you bring your device to your mouth? We can. Hello? Mohammed?
Individual
On a lighter note, I think everyone has been experiencing internet challenges today. This could be directly attributable to the sudden consumption of bandwidth by the removal of the ban on Twitter, because this internet challenge with people's voices is across board. Kindly bear with us on this. Thank God this is the last bus stop on this train. Mohammed, please, can you speak now?
I would want to use this opportunity to actually thank everyone that participated all from the beginning of this webinar. I think it's a very educative one. On behalf of the FSD, I would want to thank all the professors that has spoken extensively. Most importantly, I would want to thank Professor Olomide Ejose, Professor Aloye, Professor Hassan, Odia, and everyone has contributed immensely towards the success of this webinar. And lastly, I would want to say a very big thank you to all the individuals that have stayed from the beginning of this webinar that lasted for almost 2 to 3 hours. I think it's a nice one. Thank you very much for coming up.